Hello, and welcome to the World Building Matrix. Thank you for joining me today. I am wanting to show some progress that I've been making on my current world building project, which is the City of Martslock. So Marchlock is a major city in my campaign universe, in my fantasy setting that I am running. I run a D&D 5e campaign, and Marchlock is not currently in that campaign, but it was in previous ones in the past. It's been a couple of years since we've explored this place with my players, and I've been wanting to do some world building for it. So, I'm going to show you guys a few things so we can get a sort of idea of where we're at and the current status quo while I work on doing my world building here. So, Martslock was a major city. I'll show you one of my early maps here. So this is not my oldest map, but this is a very old map of my continent. This is vaguely how it looks now. If we take this and we turn it on its side like this is kind of what my current continent looks like. In fact, so we can see here, if we do a full comparison here, stuff is pretty similar, right? We have the same sort of shape, same basic locality of stuff. Obviously, things have changed quite a bit over the course of literal 8 years of developing this setting, but we can see the core concepts are still holding true, right? And some stuff doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense for actual and lore reasons now, rather than just lack of geographical knowledge and how things work. For example, river systems don't go all the way through like we have here, but that's because things have happened. Ooh, fancy dancy. That's a great way of covering up your past mistakes as a world builder, is just say that things have happened, and then they have. But needless to say, this is all a bunch of stuff. Mainly, we are looking for this city right here. This is the city of Martslock. And on this map, that will place us just about right at the mouth of this river. Which, I will admit, the landscape's a little bit different to this because scaling and everything like that. But this right here is the mouth of the river here that we're looking at. Clearly, it expands a lot up here. I'd probably redo this a little bit differently, given, different stuff, but the idea is the same. This is where Marchlock is located, in the agrarian plains, in what was once the Kingdom of Agraria, but is now, here, I'll actually open up the secondary map. Ooh, very highly detailed. Showing the political status quo of my setting right now. Here, let's close that. Originally, there was a large kingdom, the Kingdom of Agraria, which included all of the Free City of Martslock, the Republic of Agraria, the Mysterium Concord, and Reichhold. All of this was underneath the Kingdom of Agraria prior to a revolution that took place, which was aided by the players of the previous campaign. But the Free City of Martslock gained its freedom in that display, that war that took place following it, carving out its own little area here, as well as Jarlheim, which is an island off the coast, but the first city of Martslock. So now let's take a look at what Martslock looked like during the actual campaign we were doing. As we can see here, let's go and zoom in. The original city of Martslock here is a map I found on the internet that I flipped upside down. I know, amazing, great world building here from this guy. I was 17, probably, when I was first DMing this original campaign, and this is how I found a lot of my original maps that I used. It was just whatever I could fucking find, to be perfectly honest with you. And this is something that I found. But I have decided that I'm not going to throw the entire cow out. I'm going to take this as my inspiration for my current map of Martslock. Obviously keeping a lot of the major sort of size and scale of things, and the location of stuff such as, we're back with a cursor. Isn't that fantastic? Look at that. This is what we call innovation. But as we can see here, obviously I've kept a lot of the original design of this map here, down to like the general shape of the landscape here. Obviously some changes here with making these more islandy. I really like the idea of this being a big sort of bay area, as well as these sort of islands here and towers overlooking, stuff like that, all sorts of different stuff. So this was the original map here. I have obviously shifted. I really like the buff of different stuff. During my campaign, there were all sorts of different things that we had happen. There was the founding of a large religious order, which I'm going to have the Eternal Quest here, have a large sort of abbey within the town that is sort of the coalition of these different churches. The Mulberry Defense Force, which is this sort of extraplanar defense organization trying to stop things from beyond our realm entering into the material world, help the party. They set up like an area in Marchlock to work out of. The Mechanist Alley, there's been the development of new technologies such as a train network that connected with Martslock down to other areas. This is going to be very good, ideally, for, the development of trade further inland, not just relying on the movement of ships and up and down river systems. Hero Center, there's going to be a large sort of, we already had a square here, but the construction of statues and stuff like that in a central park that will have been developed in reverence to these heroes that saved, and also just big changes. Beyond that, the old castle, stuff like that. Areas that have had stuff happen, I have marked based off of how they happened in the campaign. But I also want to expand the wider history of Martslock. So this map was great for me when I was 17, but me at my current age of 24, I decided that I want to do more. So I have started marking out a bunch of different areas, some with like the wealth of certain areas, which I don't really have a basis for, but it's what I'm going for, areas towards the sort of central hub of the city, like the mercantile folk. There's probably going to be more rich people around those, I would assume, whereas when we're looking at the trade and industry area, I imagine you'll see poorer folk living near it, but not just near it, so I actually might want to, okay, yep, poor. Long and stretched poor. But I'll figure out more of those details as we go. I also wanted to show a history. So when we just look at this map as it is now, we can't see much. But let me pull up this other image I have. Super ready, and I was ready to have it too. This right here. Boom. Hand drawn. I love a hand drawn something. This right here, I am trying to show the history of a location. So I'll probably do better eventually with graphics and stuff, but for now, this is what you're getting, and you'll like it or you won't. You don't have to. I'm not making you. I wanted to talk about the wider history of this place and how that has shaped things, and try to figure out how we get to where we are now. So we're looking at a time span of people using this area for about 12,000 years. And don't worry, I'm not going that much detail. The first 9,000 years was goblins in this area, probably using this area maybe as a minor, very small fishing village that might have gotten up to a small kingdom before it fell apart. And that being so far in the past, any ruins of that are far decayed by this point, especially by the time the giants arrived. So between 9,500 and 5,500 RB, or the equivalent of BC in my setting, was used as small goblin villages. The population, as we see over here, probably got up to a maximum of 1,000 before falling off hard with the arrival of the giants. Giants, very large, but not very many. They don't produce that fast, so over the span of the 3,000 years, the population of giants in this area willingly got up to 17,000. Sorry, not 17,000, 1,700. But we do see some massive changes to the landscape. I think this is when we start seeing larger things like the formation of this ring. I think that this ring and this collection of quote-unquote islands here are actually ancient ruins. So these are ruins of large-scale wall dockyards that were once built by the giants, probably mainly a fishing center with maybe some minor trade. But I think these guys would have built up stuff here. They might have had to do with the larger scale sort of shape of things and how we get to the modern day. I think giants, in my setting anyways, edit the landscape a lot from the natural, quote unquote. So this here, probably some sort of ancient giant tower that has fallen down. It is now being used by the sleeping giant, who is a character in my setting, and maybe we'll get to that if we get that deep into this. But the giants making some of these larger changes to the landscape here, and primarily also shifting. Here, let me pull it up. Let me pull her up here. As we can see here, slight changes to the landscape, but also having a large impact on the height of things. This is not a fantastic height map because it's kind of hard to read, but the blue down here is the deepest ocean. The orange-ish color here is the sort of area where deep sea ships can really get inland. So we can see those are getting all the way up to this dock here. The sort of brown here is where you will have ships of smaller sizes able to navigate. So you can get some of them going upriver and then coming to this dock. But this dock here is the one that can handle deep sea vessels. And I think this sort of innovation was done by the Giants when they were originally doing stuff in this area. They sort of had moved a lot of the landscape around, built this up on here, so it was sort of sudden drop off of something that probably the water probably went all the way inland here, and this was even more separated, but this also wasn't here at all because that connects us to the time, well, a good 900 years of little use. The Orshan, who are the orcs of my setting. The Orshan are they have a lot of different connections. I have a lot of basis of Native American and sort of in terms of treatment, a lot of views on how Native Americans are viewed and treated by the later groups that come, being Europeans. But for the Orshan, they use this place for over 2,700 years. Multiple kingdoms and empires spanned over that time period. So we're not talking about a single empire ruling for that length of time. I don't try to do that much in my setting. The Orshan have at least 5 major empires during the 2,000-year span, and I use empires just mean a group conquering other sort of like ethnic groups and having them under a singular empire on other people groups. That can include species or different cultures of Orshan. That's what I think when I think empire. I'm sure there's a better definition. Feel free to school me down in the comments. I do not mind. Always willing to learn. But the Orshan, we're doing a lot of stuff here. So actually, the vast majority of the landscape that we see in modern day Martslock is built on top of this city of Reese, as it is often referred to, and an area that players explored in a previous campaign. So we can actually see that I marked that out in the green lines here. So all of these are ancient Orshan walls that they had built up. So that includes sort of here, they had built up this, which is now seemingly some sort of plateau, as well as this entire area here, very much built up. You can sort of see how it caused the landscape to form and the way it is here. So the sort of height of a lot of things is built by that, as well as the height of these areas, which are now these sort of central hills of modern day Marchlock. When we are looking back at this map, we can see this central buff, I think is the best way to refer to him, right? A buff? Yeah, that's probably the correct word. If I'm wrong, feel free to school me down in the comments. I do not mind. But this central buff here would have been, as we can even see in sort of the shape of it, this ancient Orshan construction, which has now had a lot of impact on how the modern humans are using it. And similar thing over here, even though this is not in use by modern humans, or at least not in use in that way, there'll probably be urban sprawl that I have pouring over here. We can see how the landscape has been impacted by the Orshan Pass, right? It's very scraggled, it looks scraggly, but that is the sort of, I imagine the Orshan did very similar to, I've seen defensive walls. Let me see if I can find an example of that. So for example here, probably not the best example, but the star-shaped forts and stuff like that, having those triangular formations. I don't actually know the full degree of how that is, helpful in a defensive sense. I imagine because it's limiting the flat walls maybe, or it's giving you more view than you would have with just a flat wall where you can sort of see people coming from different angles more effectively. I imagine the Orshan did very similar things with their constructions, the formation of those sorts of shapes coming from this original design element that I brought in. And then, since it's been a while since that happened, I also imagine that it has decayed over the past 1,000 years since the Orshan were really doing stuff. And really the peak of Orshan activity here, I imagine, was towards the end, actually, of their formation. So I was doing a little population chart. I was basing this sort of off of Rome, not Rome itself, but because populations got way higher at Rome, and it was the center of this massive empire. The Reese and Marchlock in the modern day was not the center of the ocean. It was actually kind of on the outskirts. It would be more analogous to, say, a Paris, for example, when the Romans were doing stuff there. But really, I wanted to base the population more off of Italian cities at that time. So population-wise, the ocean got to a population of around 200,000, 250,000, probably, around the year 1000. Or probably a little later. Damn, I was going for that high population? Okay. I write a lot of shit down, and I don't keep track of what I write. Apparently, I was going for population around 650,000. That seems a little high from what I actually want to do. That's like the largest cities of Rome. Like Rome itself got up to like 1 million, 1.5 million or something like that. So I'm thinking maybe I'll go higher than 200,000. Maybe I'll go for like a 350, 400,000 population guesstimate. And if just looking at like the walls as they were here, if we imagine that they didn't have sprawl outside of the walls like we're gonna have in the modern day, then the population, would be fairly large. And looking at the scale that we're looking at, each measurement here is 1 meter. So this is about 6.5 kilometers, right? Is that correct? Which, that's big as hell. That's big as fuck, right? That's a very large city in terms of sprawl. But the actual like walls themselves are going to be on this interior area here. So they're only going to go around 5,000 to 1,000. That's about 4 kilometers across the city, which might be too large. I don't know. I need to do more research, because from what I saw, Paris around the time span that I was looking for, which is around 1,500 to 1,600, is about 3 kilometers across. And they have a population of 250,000, I believe. 200,000, 250,000, and I'm going for a population around 18,000. 18,000. 180,000? I'm so bad with numbers and remembering which ones I'm going to say. 180,000. So I'm going to take a look. I'll try and figure out if I want to make the population of this place bigger or if I want to try and scale it back a little bit. We'll see. I don't know. But I'm trying to work on more specifics as well. But outside of that larger history, humans have been using the area of Martslock for the past 600 years. It really became Marchlock as it is known. My setting is currently in the year 3121 AK. So humans have been using it for just over 600 years. With that, a big boom in population has come very recently because there's been a immigration crisis. Oh boy, don't we love that. There's been a lot of migration coming from different areas of the setting into this area because of the richness and the sort of newer controlled, and the newer government has made a lot of lax situations able to occur. So there have been those who are able to exploit it. I imagine this place is having a lot of issues of so much population, it's hard to keep track. When we look at that urban sprawl, we're going to see a lot of that around here. Populations that I imagine are really coming into this area are the sun elves and the moon elves as well. A lot of what are called celestial elves or high elves in my setting are based off of the sun and the moon. There was a large disaster of the elven homeland. It was pretty much, so yes, looking at the map here, it was effectively magically nuked. The lunar isles are gone. The Hilarian Sea, there's a massive storm that is causing a lot of problems for trade and movement of stuff here, which is also causing a lot of problems all over. It's causing a lot of immigration away from especially any sun elves, which are they were doing a lot of empire stuff, enslaving large amounts of different species and peoples, and they got. But obviously the citizens of this empire are trying to survive, so going to an area like Martslock, I imagine you have a large amount of people moving up through here, trying to go through Esther Way, probably, or the Giant's Alley over in the Esther Peaks. But really, the divide is really where large amounts of population is coming through, having to deal with the Polarian. Whoa. I remember the name of my own fantasy kingdoms? Ultimate goal. Remember the name of your own damn world building. Kingdom of Collier. There we go. Kingdom of Kolar down here. Lots of discrimination against the Sun Elves. So going up into an area where there is less of that, such as Agraria, makes sense, and Marchlock being an area that is central for trade and sort of like a jewel on the edge where it's like, oh, this is a place I can go. There's a lot of, acceptance of other species, not just humans, and it's really becoming a melting pot style city. It might even, who knows, maybe it'll turn into a New York allegory in my setting at one point. We shall see. But to get to anything like that, we have to start deciding stuff. So I think making a place like Soluna here, where it will be sort of like a slum sort of area where tons of people are coming in, moving in. It's going to be sort of an allegory. Is allegory the right term? It's in reference to other stuff, right? It is in reference to stuff in our world to try and talk about it. Mechanist Alley, that is an area where a lot of industrialization is happening. Magical industrialization. Train network is being built, so a lot of the Sun Elf poor are being put to work on that because it's one of the few areas they can get it right now. But we shall see. I'm going to go more in depth and see if I want to go down the route or what exactly I want to do. But I want to work on making areas like that feel more like a real city, like we would see in our world, where you have immigrant groups who come together. That's how you get your Chinatowns, your Little Italies, your anything like that you have in a major city like New York or other cities around the world, where you have large amount of immigration. But the elves are a big immigrant into this area. Beyond that, the Orsh are sort of undercut. As I said, there was an allegory for the Native Americans in that one. When we look at the Orshan in my setting, they had these massive empires which are no longer attributed to them. Humans of the modern day do not look at the Orshan as the constructors of these old forts. Even the ruins that still exist and are sometimes used by humans, they're like, well, the Orshan clearly could not have built this. Come on, look at them. They live in tribes. They can't build big cities, which is obviously a connection to how modern day Americans, even still, but especially, Americans and Europeans of the sort of 19th, 20th century looked at Native American groups. But you still see a lot of it today in the 21st century. So yeah, I want to work on naming places, getting ideas for neighborhoods, getting ideas for what I want these places to look like. And eventually I want to try and see if I can't use different tools and stuff, such as World Painter, Axiom, Lightmatica, to build maybe the city in Minecraft. Could be pretty fire. And then I could use that as just a project to do while doing stuff. So this is sort of a D&D world building plus Minecraft world building series I might be doing. We'll see. I don't know. It depends. If you guys like it and you have any ideas, let me know. Or if you want to know more about any of these specific areas, I think I am going to call it here because I've been recording for a minute and just talking. I haven't really been doing much. Well, I've been doing a lot of world building, I guess, because we're talking about the history, current relations, all sorts of different things come into your world building, and they should, because if you do your world building from a place of a known past, at least known to you, then you can make it a lot more interesting. Like, this place isn't a kingdom anymore, but there's still the old castle from when it was, and that's now being used either as, I don't know, we'll see exactly what it's used for in the modern day, but maybe as the governmental center still for these sort of like guild of guildsmen, I suppose, that I have envisioned for this area. I imagine Marchlock is sort of the center of a lot of different interaction and vying for control, from the mercantile groups to the guild heads to the religious centers to the government itself, and all this different stuff that is vying for, control over the riches that Marchlock has to offer. But yes, I'm going to continue working on stuff in the meantime, and I will give you guys an update maybe soon if you're interested. Hope you enjoy. This has been a lot of show and tell. Next time, maybe if you're interested in knowing some stuff, I'll happily do some research on world building stuff, or at least how to put it better than I put it currently. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. This has been the World Building Matrix, and I will see you next time.